Welcome back, Fantasy Fiction Fanatics. It's great to see you again, and I hope you're doing well. Today's class is going to be on chapters 13 through 20 of Exile. So we are moving right along with this book. I know it's a little bit of a bigger chunk of chapters this time, but I felt like we have a lot of the same kind of thing happening in these chapters. Like we have only a couple of main aspects to these chapters, and so I clumped them together just to talk about the actual incidences or events that are happening in these particular chapters to their full amount. So let's go ahead and start with our recap. If you do enjoy this discussion on these chapters, it'd be really great if you could subscribe if you're not already and give me a thumbs up if you like it. It does really help the channel, and I hope that you are enjoying my content. So let's jump right in and we can go ahead and discover some things together about this section of the book. Okay, so Drizzt and Belwar are continuing their journey through the Underdark. They're still trying to find place for them and trying to get deep enough away that Drizzt's family won't be able to continue coming after him or cause him any more problems. Though, unfortunately, Zack is still also following them deeper into the Underdark, even though they are not aware of that. So, Zack has rediscovered the trail, and he's on continuing to go behind them. And Drizzt and Belwar, on their journey, end up encountering this human wizard who is kind of crazy and decides to attack them. He's not a very reasonable person and is very hostile. So they end up having to just run away from him and keep going without, getting too close or knowing him very well. And they continue going on and on until eventually they find a place that they think is suitable to build themselves a home. And they're excited that they finally found some place that they can rest and be safe and to live. But shortly while they're making their home, shortly after they've started, a hook horror comes and they're about to kill it when they realize or find out that this hook horror is actually a petch who is not, just been turned into a hook horror. He's not actually a hook horror who wants to cause them any harm. And they decide they want to help the petch, who they name Clacker. And they find out from Clacker that he was turned into this hook horror form by a human wizard. So off they go back the way they came in order to try and convince the wizard to turn Clacker back into a petch. Unfortunately, they do find the wizard, but are not able to get him to change Clacker back because Clacker has a sudden furious rage inside him that comes from being a hook horror and kills the wizard and kills his chance of getting turned back into a petch. Very unfortunately. So off back to home they go, and they decide that Clacker is going to stay with them, and they get back to their house only to find that Zack, unbeknownst to them, they don't know it's Zack, but they find that Zack, or at least somebody, has ransacked their home, and they recognize that they are not far enough away from Mesobranzin to get rid of whoever's after them. So they decide, okay, this is not the home for them, and they continue further into the Underdark. Unfortunately for them, they soon get captured by some mind flayers who enslave them and take them back to their society to be their slaves. And it's not a fun experience. They are split up and they are mentally enslaved, so they don't even realize that they don't want to be there. But they work for the mind flayers for a while until Guinevere ends up being able to break free from her celestial plane and to come back into the real world, because one of the not just one, I think it was 3 mind flayers end up going into the celestial world to try and observe her, and she follows them back into the real world after attacking them and attacks all the other mind flayers, at least in her vicinity. And this helps free the mind control that the mind flayers had over all the slaves, including our three main people here. And they work together to start their escape. Unfortunately, that's when they're almost out and Drizzt notices Zack, and they end up having an encounter together. They fight. Drizzt is almost overwhelmed when Clacker ends up saving him, and the three of them are then escaping from the mind flayers and from Zack. So there we go. That's our section that we read today, or for today. So hopefully you are still enjoying the story. Like I said, it's kind of like just a couple of big events happen in this, like the fact that they're caught by the mind flayer and they're in their society for that while, and we've got the little bit more of them discovering Clacker and Clacker joining their group of friends. So yeah, it's a very interesting set of chapters. I feel like I really felt really bad for them when they were stuck in the mind flayer society, especially for Clacker, who kind of has himself, kind of doesn't, and he is really just struggling internally with himself as well. So it was really hard for me to know that Clacker was having double issues, the mind control, yet also having this mental struggle with himself, the hook horror side of him and the Petch side of him. So I felt really bad for Clacker. But maybe he'll be able to be saved, maybe he won't. It's unknown at this point. He did kill the wizard that cursed him, but maybe he'll be able to find another solution later. And now that they've broke free of the mind flayers, we're going to have to see where they go from here and how the story will evolve, especially since Zack is now in the equation. Drizzt knows about him and understands that something is not right, and it's not really his father that is back. It's something that's just looks like him, or fights like him at least. So let me know what you guys think of this set of chapters. If you enjoyed it, any questions that you had, any concerns that you had, any thoughts at all, I'd love to hear what you thought of this section, and if you liked the events or anything else, maybe you didn't like the events. Just love to hear your thoughts and opinions. So the first topic I want to discuss is going to be world building. Because in this set of chapters, we see some new creatures, we see a new society, we are being introduced to some new aspects of this world that we have not previously seen before, which is allowing us to continue to build the world that we are set in, as well as to experience some new things that this world has to offer. And anytime that we have that, of course, it equals to building of the world, experiencing more of it, understanding more of it, and knowing what can happen and what does happen in this world. So first, we learn about the Petch, who are rock children and can work the stone, shape it. Some of them can even communicate with the stone directly, or can feel it, and that they are just very, very simple beings. So they might be in the Underdark, but it doesn't seem like they're very much part of the creatures that are like really hardcore evil beings, like the Drow. Instead, they're more simple, kind of close to, Belwar and the gnomes. They're more simple, hardworking creatures that just have an affinity for working with stone. So I find that that's super interesting, and I do kind of wonder, as someone who doesn't know of much about D&D and the world outside of what I read, since our Petch friend Clacker is only a hook horror right now, it would be really interesting to find out if he is transformed back into a Petch, what a Petch actually looks like and how they interact with the rocks and such. We did see a little bit of his interaction with the rocks at the very end of this set of chapters when he saves Drizzt, but who's to say how long that will last or if that will be able to happen again? We will just have to wait and see on that. But I do like that they're just simple people who have just simple wants and goals of having a good life, working with the stone that they love and can communicate with so well. Next, who are not so nice, we have the Mind Flayers, who captured them and put them as slaves in their society. So the Mind Flayers' biggest aspect is that they can control your mind. They are mind controllers. And that is basically their main attribute in terms of what they can do, how they do things, why they do things, how they view the world. So much revolves around the fact that they can control other creatures' minds. They are all connected through one central brain, which is super interesting. They are like I don't want to say necessarily a hive mind kind of creatures, but kind of. They just are all connected with all their thoughts, their feelings, their motivations are all connected through this one brain that just doesn't have a body. It's just sitting out there tended to by slaves. Not sure how this brain came into being, or not, or how it ended up connecting to these other creatures. I think that's a super interesting aspect of it. But that is their main function. And it doesn't matter how far they get, they can still have that connection to that brain that then can connect them to everybody else and to understand and know what's going on with the rest of the society. They rely extremely heavily on their mind control. Like, that's all that they care about. That's all they assume they need. That's the core of their being and their society. So it's very interesting that this one particular trait that they have is the very center and core of everything. So you take away that ability and they literally have no way to do anything, to defend themselves, to function as a society. It's really interesting that they have this one trait that they rely on so heavily for so long that once that's gone, it just all crumbles completely. They have nothing else. And it's really interesting that they are so arrogant as well. It makes sense. I mean, if you can have control over all of the beings and you've never had a problem with that before, of course you're going to be arrogant. Of course you're going to see your society as the best one and to be above everybody else. But it was just super interesting to see it as we were interacting with them and their society through Belwar and Drizzt and Clacker, and just the amount of true arrogance that they have towards other sets of beings and how much they look down upon them was super interesting to learn about and to reflect on as we see these creatures through others' eyes. And along with that arrogance, they also have no regard for any of the other races. They enjoy the slavery. They enjoy the murdering of them. They enjoy the destroying of these other peoples. They just truly, their entertainment is destruction of other peoples and to, completely control them and to exert their power over them. So they're not a great race of people, in my opinion. They are pretty horrible and do not see themselves as anybody who needs to fix their society or their frame of mind. And I can kind of get it. Like I said, if you can control everybody, how could you not think of yourself as superior and to not develop those aspects? But of course, I have to not like them because that's horrible. And they're doing it to Drizzt and Belwar and Clacker, who are important to me and who I really enjoy, and I don't want that to happen to them. I just didn't want that to happen to them, but it did. But they got out of it thanks to Gwen. Thank you very much to Gwen for coming to their rescue and protecting them as best as she could. So at least they were able to break free. And I do wonder with the Mind Flayers, now that they've had Zach, who had completely no effects on the power that they had, the mind control completely bounced off of him, and he was so overpowered that he's just murdering them all. I wonder if that will lead them to changing. Maybe not. Maybe so. It's not like they're going to run into the equivalent of Zach a lot. He is an abnormality. But maybe this experience will change their society somehow. And maybe it really won't. But we'll maybe see in the future if we ever see the Mind Flayers again. And last but not least, I thought this was an interesting aspect, is we finally get to meet a human wizard. Someone who is from the world above, which we have not had much interaction with, and who are not known for venturing into the Underdark. And the first look at humans in this world is not a great one. It is not a happy introduction. And I guess that makes sense in the fact that what nice regular human is going to end up coming down in the Underdark and surviving? Probably no chance at all. So it does make sense that we have a really crappy human who is very well versed in just surviving. That's going to be our first impression. But it also was kind of sad that it was that harsh of an introduction. It doesn't really cast humans in a great light, and it doesn't really make even me want to have Drizzt go up to the surface and interact with them. So, not a great cast of light there. He was also very arrogant, very judgmental, very much kind of portrayed like he's I don't want to say dumb, but kind of like uneducated. Which obviously if you're a wizard, I'm assuming that you're more educated because you have to know magic and such. But the way that they portrayed him was just this guy who's just very mean, uneducated, not able to communicate very well, and who just turns innocent little petches into hook horrors. Like, who does that? So, I'm not really sure what this human wizard was doing down in the Underdark, why he was down in the Underdark, but it wasn't a great interaction with him. And Clacker then did kill him, and that was that. So, we'll hopefully interact with some other humans at some point, maybe in the next book, maybe not, but hopefully this is not an indicator of how humans are in this world, at least fully, because it didn't really seem like a great race of people that we would want to know. Drizzt and Belwar are better people than that wizard was, for sure. So, that was the extent of what I feel like was for the world building in this selection of chapters. Please let me know if you think there's anything that I missed or anything else about the world that you'd like to add, or anything about these 3 types of people who we met in this set of chapters. I feel like we're really continuing to still build and grow this world, even at a time where like they're out in the middle of nowhere. We're still building things, we're still meeting new kinds of people, new societies, and really getting a chance to see what life is like in the Underdark. Next, let's go ahead and talk about how this set of chapters really gives us kind of a dose of reality, is kind of what I was thinking about. Or the fact that it presents a good reality to it. And by that I mean not everything goes their way. Not everything is perfect. They're not invincible. We really have a grounded version of these characters and this world. It's not that everything just goes magically well for our main characters, which would not be the truth in any reality that we would be in. So it really adds some depth, and a lot of good aspects to this particular book. None of our main characters, like I said, are invincible. They're not able to just do whatever. They can't defeat every single enemy. They get captured, they get enslaved, they have issues that they can't get out of on their own. Even Drizzt, who is the perfect fighter in many ways, cannot break from the mind flayer. He might have that hunter instinct in him, but he still can be mind controlled. He can still get captured and can't just kill all his enemies. He can't even defeat Zack right away. We don't even know if he'll be able to defeat Zack later. But in the time that they interacted this time, he definitely did not beat Zack, and Zack almost killed him. It was just luck that Clacker was there to save him. So our characters are not perfect, and they have the ability to be overpowered. They could have easily been trapped forever there or killed. Very, very easily. Without Gwen, they would still be trapped there, and Zack would have probably killed them. Maybe they would have been able to escape a little bit with Zack causing such a ruckus and possibly breaking their mind control, but more than likely they'd be enslaved long enough that they wouldn't be able to defeat Zack when he came around. So this was something that had to happen because they are not invincible. Even Clacker, who wasn't, completely under the Mind Flayer's control because he has that duality to his mentality, was not able to escape or resist enough to help his friends escape. He was still stuck until the proper moment where he was fully free from the mind control, and that the mind flayers were distracted enough that he could attempt to get across that bridge to take them out. And when all chaos broke loose, that was when he was able to make his move. This helps ground our story really well, and it gives us that little bit of a dose of reality that not everything is going to go well, not everything is going to be set in stone for our main characters. We have that realism, that reality that is intruding upon our story, and it adds to the tension, it adds to the suspense, it makes it where it's worth reading about, because if everything was going to go well, we probably would not care very much about these characters or what was going to happen to them, because we would know in the end everything's going to work out and they will just defeat every enemy on their way there. And that is why a lot of stories that have these really overpowered characters, we think we want that as readers and as watchers of shows and movies. But then when we get it, it's kind of lackluster, because it's like, what's the point of there being any other characters when this one character can just defeat everything? And what's the point of this story if we know in the end there's not going to be any problems? So I really like that in this set of chapters we really see that these characters are not invincible. They are not immortal. They are not infallible. They have issues, and they have to either break free from them, or maybe they won't. Maybe they won't escape. Maybe Clacker might not have escaped. Maybe Belwar wouldn't have escaped. We don't know. We are being presented with obstacles that we are unsure whether it was going to be leading out the other side in a good way. Obviously, with it being Drizzt as our main character, it is unlikely at this point, since there's another book, that he would die. But you never know. There is that sense that maybe something really bad could happen to him still. Even if it's not death, maybe he could get really injured. Maybe he, is stuck there for a long time, and, his friends die before he can escape. I don't know. But we have that possibility in these chapters. We have the possibility that not everything is going to go well, and that we don't know how they're going to escape, because they can't break free on their own. So it adds to the credibility, it adds to the realism, it really makes our characters realistic, and us to be able to connect with them more, because we ourselves are not able to do everything. So we appreciate the fact that characters have that relatability of not being invincible and not being able to do anything and everything just because they're in a story. So that was something that I really was thinking about in this set of chapters, was how Salvatore has really made these characters realistic for the place that they're in, while giving them enough of a boost that they're not too weak to survive out there. And it makes a really grounded story and adds to the tension of having that anxiety of like, how are they going to get out of this? It adds to the suspense. And I was thinking, like, how many chapters are we going to spend in here? Like, obviously I recognize that we're probably going to get out, but how many chapters? What's actually going to happen? Is this going to change some of the characters forever because of this traumatizing event? And I appreciate that about this particular book. And the next thing I'd like to talk about is the darkness of the story and this world. So obviously, this is not a happy series. This is not a happy-go-lucky series at all. This is not a happy world that we are in, at least this portion of it. We don't know about the outside world, but at least the Underdark is not a great place to be. We have experienced that through book 1 and now through most of book 2. And this set of chapters really, once again, hits home. This is not a great place to be. And this story is not one that's going to be filled with rainbows and sunshine. Clacker is cursed. And though he is cursed to be a hook horror, there's a lot of stories that would just make it where he's cursed to be a hook horror, but he's still himself inside, and he just has to make sure he doesn't get killed for being a hook horror or from killing others. You know, you gotta get used to your new person. But in this story, we have it where Clacker and his mental state is going to be likely lost forever. Obviously, we've had a little bit of help for the Petch side of him in the end of this last chapter. But Belwar has basically said, if he continues to be this hook horror, he is going to be a hook horror in the end. Eventually, everything that makes him Petch will be gone. And that is pretty dark and sad. We've got in these chapters enslavement, torture, death. We've got a lot of death for the slaves that are in the Mind Flayer compound. Sure, we've got the Mind Flayer's deaths. Those seem a little more justified, but the slaves that are here get eaten by the Mind Flayers, get eaten by Clacker because he was told to, and that was the food that he was given. We have death in the fighting rings where, Belwar has to kill another creature in order to, in those battles to the death, to our Mind Flayer entertainment. We've got the Mind Flayers torturing their people. They have them, enslaved and pretending like they're happy to be there. They make them think that they're happy to be there and happy to be slaves. So there is a lot of darkness, especially in these chapters. I really felt the darkness of these chapters a lot, along with the reality of how grounded this story is. It's really showing off how dark the Underdark is, and the creatures that live in this Underdark are super dark, not great people, and that is just their society, that's just their lives. Like the Drow are not great people, the Mind Flayer are very, very much just as bad, and they are able to make it even worse in the fact that you think that you're happy about it. So it's not just that the Drow society is the evil society that's down here and everything else is just trying not to get in their way. There's a lot of different things down in the Darks that are horrible and are humanoid enough to have a humanoid society and to bring out that horrible aspects that societies can have. and how they can treat others. Plus, Zach, who was the one good thing in Drizzt's life, has now been twisted into something horrible and something dark, and has taken that joy from Drizzt. And so even the interactions and the people that we know can be manipulated into being something dark and horrible for our characters. So it's just showing, at least this set of chapters is really just bringing home how dark and how terrible this Underdark world is, and how even when you're a good person, you can't escape all the horribleness that is happening in the Underdark. So let me know what your thoughts were on any of my 3 main topics for this set of chapters. Let me know your thoughts on how dark it is and whether you see just how you see that and how you experienced it. Did it really affect you? For these chapters, I guess, especially since they affected me pretty hard in these set of chapters, or did you feel like this just fit well with how we were going along with this story? I'd just love to hear your thoughts, your feelings about any of these topics, and to hear how you interacted with this book itself. Now, time for the nitty gritty. So, I have 3 different nitty gritty points. The first one is more of a thought to see what's coming up ahead, and that is about Clacker and his Petch self. As I've talked about before, his Petch self is going to be slowly rotting away until he's just a mindless hook horror. But he has had this now moment of clarity where he's gotten his Petch self fully back, and he's even able to manipulate the stone, so much so that only a strong Petch would have been able to do that. So, will this help him keep himself, or will this deteriorate him faster? That's what I think is going to be interesting to see moving forward, is how is this going to affect Clacker, and how will they move forward, especially if he ends up going crazy and as a hook horror, will his friends have to kill him? Again, if they have to kill him, that would be super dark and depressing, but it is a possible scenario in this story. So we're going to have to look out and see how these events have affected that mental state that he has. Second is we're going to have to figure out how he's going to defeat Zach, because one, Zach is an excellent fighter, and he's also Zincarla, so he has that even more so. His fighting has been even more honed from that. And seeing Drizzt and battling Drizzt did not seem to have any effect whatsoever. He did not think about Drizzt at all other than wanting to kill him. It didn't make him hesitate. It didn't make him feel like, oh man, like that's my son there. Nothing. He was not affected in one iota. So, is he going to be affected later? Probably unlikely. And Drizzt, though he's a good fighter, is he going to be good enough in order to defeat Zach? And will he even have that ability to re-kill his father, who he loves very much? I'm not sure. So we'll have to see how that plays out as we move forward. And the third thing that I think is interesting is we saw Malice a little bit and the Drow Society a little bit during these chapters, but it was more of a background thing, not a forefront thing. And we only saw little snippets here and there. But it does make me wonder, how much time does Matron Malice actually have to kill Drizzt before Lolth is going to deem it a failure? I mean, is it just eternal? I wouldn't think so. I think you have to defeat Drizzt before Lolth decides to call you a failure. So, how much time is she actually going to have? Obviously, she's gotten close to Drizzt, and that is helpful for her. That'll probably be a better case for her if Lolth does decide to ask her why she hasn't finished off him yet. But at what point will the cord be plugged? Will the cord be pulled? And Lolth is going to say, "Kate, you are a failure, and I have no favor for you in your house." it's a dangerous line that Malice is walking because she asked for favors when she wasn't in favor with Lolth. And if this doesn't work out, I'm not really sure exactly what will happen to to Drizzt's family and Malice's house. I don't really know if Lolth will take it out on most of them or not, if it will be destroyed. Breza is still in favor for Lolth, so maybe that'll lead somewhere. We'll have to find out, but I do think it's interesting that they've been taking, that Malice has taken so much time, and yet Lolth is still having the patience with her, when I don't see Lolth being very patient generally. Okay, so that's all I have to say for this set of chapters. Again, please let me know in the comments what your thoughts and your feelings are. I'd love to have a discussion with you on this set of chapters. Alright, before we go ahead and head out for today, let's just go over the trivia question. Thank you so much to everyone who participated and sent in an answer. I really appreciate your playing with me, and hopefully you will have a good time going and checking out the trivia question and seeing if you know the answer. Today's question, or this past month's question, was who is the main character of the Witcher series? And that is Geralt, or Geralt of Riva as his full title. And congratulations to Paul, Dan, Christian of Suburbia, and Crypt, or KR1PT, for answering correctly. Thanks again to everybody who participated and gave it their best shot. I really appreciate that you guys play with me, and I hope that you guys have a fun time. If you would like to check out the trivia question, it is over on the blog, fantasyfictionfanatics.net. It's going to be on that right-hand side. You'll just have to scroll down just a little bit, and it will be there, at least on desktop. On mobile, you'll have to scroll almost all the way down, but it will be down there towards the bottom. While you're over on the blog, checking out the trivia question, it would be really great if you also checked out some of my other content that's on there. I've got blog posts, I've got discussion stuff that I just put out my thoughts and feelings on different topics for fantasy and reading. I've got different terminology stuff on there if you are interested in knowing about more terminology or things about fantasy. I've got personal anecdotes on there. I've got lots of different stuff, book reviews, book recommendations, just a bunch of different things that maybe you might be interested in, and I hope that you check it out, and hopefully you'll enjoy what you find over there as well. If you have anything in particular that you'd like to see on this channel, please let me know. I do love hearing your requests, and we'll try to make them happen if I can. Alright, if you want to get a hold of me, and down below is not the best place for you, no worries. You can also reach me on social media. I've got Facebook, which is /fantasyfiction1, as well as I update on there anything from the blog or from the channel. I update on there for you to see. You can also follow me on Twitter, which is @fantasyfiction1. Again, I update new things there for whatever's going on, either on the channel or on the blog. And you can also find me on Instagram, which is also @fantasyfiction1. And I do post a little bit less there, but I am getting more accustomed to posting there with some new content, some stuff that hopefully you'll enjoy. So check out Instagram if you want to see some of that. And you can direct message me on any of those 3 platforms. Also, the best place, in my opinion, to go is to the Fantasy Fiction Fanatics Discord. So that way you can talk to not only me, direct message me on there, but also get updates and talk to your fellow fantasy fanatics about anything else that you'd like. You can talk about what I talk about here on the channel. You can talk about other fantasy things. You can talk about anything else. I have a wide range of things that we can talk about over there with your fellow fanatics and hear other people's opinions and have fun talking about fantasy together. So hopefully you'll join us over there. The link is down below, and we would love to have you. But that is it for me today, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.